Oh, thanks, guys. Oh, thanks. How cute. That was super exciting conversation to hear. I love listening to those two guys kind of talk about their trajectory together because they're good friends. I think you can see that. I'm sure they mentioned Jose was an early investor in TicketBiz, and I love that you see that rapport. You just feel like a little fly on the wall as they're chatting to each other. But stay in your seats, folks. Don't go anywhere because we're jumping from marketplaces to a completely different topic, which is a really interesting phenomenon now happening in Spain, and particularly in Madrid, and one which I hope is going to continue. We had a wonderful local success story here last year when a huge Silicon Valley startup in Eventbrite that went public as well this year acquired a local startup here, Ticketea, founded by Javier Andres, a well-known hero and familiar face around the South Summit. And instead of just, acquiring the company and integrating it directly into Eventbrite and maybe just holding on to some of the local commercial staff or even closing the office, which sometimes happened, these guys recognized the talent in Spain, in Madrid, particularly from a technical and engineering perspective, and actually doubled down on that investment and have now built out an engineering hub for the global Eventbrite company out of Madrid, which is a fascinating trend. We've actually seen Amazon do some similar things. We've seen Huawei do some similar things, and even Ericsson is an R&D hub in Madrid. So again, consistently validating the technical talent that's available in Spain. But without further ado, we'll let the guys tell you all about it themselves. I'm thrilled that this conversation is facilitated by Walter Jennings, a world-renowned communications expert who was head of communications at Huawei globally for a number of years. We're delighted to have him facilitate this conversation. And without further ado, please welcome to the stage Renaud Visage, co-founder and CTO at Eventbrite, and Walter Jennings. Good to see you. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being here, Walter. All yours.
Thank you very much. That's a nice introduction, isn't it?
It's a great introduction. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Walter Jennings. I'm CEO of Asia Insight Circle, and as introduced, had been head of global communications at Huawei for a number of years. Joining us on stage, Renaud Visage, a co-founder of Eventbrite, and at many times chief technical officer, but the engineering brains behind the product. So glad you could join us today.
Thank you. It's great to be back in Madrid.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful to be here with the lack of humidity, the wonderful weather. I'm from Hong Kong, so it's very nice for a change. Now, Renaud, before we were talking, Liz during her introduction mentioned the acquisition of Ticketea by Eventbrite. Now, along with their customers, you inherited quite a large group of people here, and that's led to an engineering center here in Spain, correct?
Yeah, we're expanding in Europe, and Ticketea was the leader on the market, so we made the logical decision of acquiring the company, and we also tried to assess the quality of the team on the engineering side because we were looking at the fourth development center for our team to grow. We are trying to hire a lot of product and engineering folks, and we found that Silicon Valley has a lot of limitations, and we tried to determine whether Madrid could be a viable center for us and to build on that team, which was, we found, very strong and was a big reason why we decided to acquire the company last year.
Renaud, you're using a term that I'd not heard of before, distributed engineering. Can you explain that?
Well, I think a lot of companies call it, I don't know, remote offices. I think we are very strongly of the opinion that the teams have to be treated equally, have to have the same type of responsibilities. People want to be engaged on very meaningful activities anywhere you go. And we didn't want the Madrid team or the team in Argentina that we also have to be working on menial tasks or just localization efforts or one market type of product enhancements. We wanted them to have very core responsibilities for the global product so that we can hire the best talent. Because I think the best talent is very demanding today. They have a lot of opportunities talent is scarce, even in Madrid. I mean, it's not like there's 1,000 people waiting to find a job. Like all engineers, all product people are very rare, and they're very sought after by many different players, established players, but also new startups. So for us, it was very important for this team to feel like they were a big component of our success. So we gave them very big responsibilities from the get-go, and that's why we called these teams distributed teams, because they're really a part of the big engineering effort that we have and have huge responsibilities. For example, the Madrid team is working on our checkout process, on order management, and on reporting for the entire world, not just for Spain, for the whole world. And they respond very well to the challenge. Like, we were blown away by their level of commitment to making progress very quickly and on a speed that we don't see sometimes in the other offices. So.
No, that would have been very exciting for the team at Ticketea to suddenly now find themselves embedded as part of the solution on a global product.
Yeah, I think it's very attractive for talent to be working on global problems inside much larger organization. Like, they're in touch with client representatives all around the world to understand the difference between different countries, in the way we do payments, in the way we treat our clients. So they have to understand the broader picture to be as effective as possible in their core area of expertise.
Now, Renaud, you make a very good cheerleader for the concept of distributed engineering or remote working. As one of the co-founders of Eventbrite, you weren't based near the head office, were you? Tell us about your experience.
So yes, when we started the company in 2006, I was living in Paris, and I met my two co-founders who were living in San Francisco through a common friend. We really treated it as a project at first. We said, oh, let's explore this area. We don't see any products out there. Maybe there's something to be done. So we very much started working together quite informally. I mean, we kind of had the sense that meeting in person was going to remain very critical in the next few years. Social networking was becoming bigger and bigger, but we thought there's still this need to connect on a personal basis at events, and there was no platform out there. But it was very informal, the way we started working together. I was building the product during my day in Paris. I spent a couple of years doing that with them. And then at the end of my day at 6 p.m., we would have a call on Skype. I would show them what I've done. They would give me feedback. We would make plans for the next few weeks. So it was very efficient of a development framework. And we each had our own areas of expertise. So we were working on slightly different things during our days and being very connected all the way, even though we were, 6,000 miles away or 9,000, I forget.
A decade ago, that kind of remote work experience would have been unusual. Today, it seems to be the norm. Now, for our audience, many of them are building companies. What advice do you have for them in terms of managing remote teams or working with kind of maybe freelancers available working in components? You know, how do you best activate a workforce that isn't right outside your office door?
So I think first, understand the difference between a fully distributed team and remote offices working together, because I think it's two different propositions that don't get architected operationally at all the same way. So as a founder, I think you have a choice to make. If the talent pool that you're going after is very rare, like for very advanced, robotics/AI, where you might need talent to found the talent wherever they are, then maybe a fully distributed team or fully remote team makes sense, because then your hiring playground is the entire world. You just need to find the most qualified people to solve the problem. And for that, I think it's very attractive not to have to move to a different city to join a team. You can do it from your university, for example, if you're a researcher. So I think this model of distributed teams will resonate a lot with projects that have very strong R&D constraints, for example, where you need to really find the best talent. Distributed teams is more and more common. I think I invest in quite a few startups, and I see that more and more, where there's one team in, let's say, the business team in London, the development team in Poland or Madrid, for that matter. And I think that's a good way to manage your cost basis as you validate your MVP, for example, as you wait to raise the next round. It's a very cost-efficient way of running, and with all the tools available today, I think the barriers to making this an efficient model have been lowered dramatically.
Renaud, when we were speaking beforehand, you really had been talking about Spain as a global engineering hub. What are the benefits here in Spain that make it so attractive?
Well, for us, it was also a very strategic question because we had 3 development centers, San Francisco, Nashville, and Mendoza in Argentina, but we had no coverage in Europe, for example. So strategically, it made a lot of sense to have engineering here, to be close to the European market, to be more reactive to our European clients. So for that reason alone, I think it was the right investment. After that, we think a lot about cost efficiency. We're a public company now. We will have to show profits at some point, so we try to rationalize maybe a bit better where we hire, why we hire this team in different places. The cost of starting and running a business out of the Silicon Valley is huge. And a few companies can afford it, the Facebooks, the Googles, but also all of them have development centers elsewhere because they run out of talent pool in the Valley, for example. So, I think my mic just went.
I think we've lost Renaud.
I know it's back. All right. Also, we found the quality of talent very high. So I think Madrid, especially, and Barcelona are starting to hire world-class people who want to live here. They've been trained at the best companies. Our 2 recent hires in Madrid came from Dublin. They were working for Dropbox and another Silicon Valley startup there. They had been trained. They understood what it meant to work for a Silicon Valley company, and they wanted that experience. And they now can have it by working for companies like ours where they want to live, which is in Spain.
Well, Renaud, I want to shift gears for a minute because there are a lot of startups and scale-ups in the audience, and you've ridden the dragon through the ride from startup now to a large-scale company. What were some of the milestones or the key kind of shift-ups that occurred during your career with Eventbrite?
So I think this is personally and then professionally. Personally, I didn't realize how much we as co-founders would have to evolve over time. Like you think it's going to get better at some point once you raise your Series B, C, you have a lot of people, but you still have to find your place inside the organization. You have to fit and still bring value, all from inception all the way to being a public company and beyond. And that takes a lot of introspection, I think, to understand why you're still around, what you're going to be applying your skills to, what are these skills that are unique. And it's very important, I think, for companies to keep their founders as long as possible, because once you lose the founders, you lose a certain part of your spirit, I would say. So if you are engaging on the startup journey, like don't think about this commitment as a short-term investment. Like it's going to be, if the company is successful, 10, 15, 20 years before you're able to exit, sometimes shorter, but it's usually rarer that it happens. On the business side, I think we started as a very US company, headquartered in San Francisco, with a very US mindset, and the transition to being a global company took quite a bit of time. So we started the company in 2006. Our first international office was London in 2011, when we started expanding in Europe. Organizationally, I think that was a big switch, and mentally as well, to not think just about having an entire team in one office. Like, that's a simple change, but it changes completely how you communicate, how you engage your employees, what culture of the company is. Because there's not one culture. Like I see it every time I go to a different office. they take the basics of our culture and then they adapt it to the local ecosystem because they have different values, different ways of working, and I think as a company, it's our responsibility to enable that so that they can have their own interpretation and it becomes their culture, and it's awesome when it happens.
So it's not only a growth story for the company, it's a growth story for the founders to be able to evolve and kind of scale up.
Yeah, like my co-founder Julia, she, I started a company with a husband and wife couple. Kevin was the CEO for 10 years, and Julia took over after Kevin stepped down. So for her, it's been a fully, and she didn't come from the startup world. Like we both came from the startup world, but she didn't. So she's had a huge journey from helping us on the side, learning all the ropes about startups, to now leading a 1,000+ person company and going through an IPO.
Now, Renaud, we only have about a minute and a half, and I cannot, in good faith, pass on this next subject. You're an advisor to a venture fund and you're an investor in seed stage companies. Please don't rush the stage yet. But what are the things you're looking for when you're looking at seed stage companies?
Well, I'm a technologist at heart, so I'm going to look for companies that have differentiated technology. I'm not that interested in pure marketplaces or Me Too businesses. I want my co-founder or my founders, and I kind of feel as I'm a co-founder of their enterprise, as pushing the envelope, trying to disrupt big markets with something that's unique to them. So that's one element that I look at. And then at the seed stage, I think we invest mostly in the people. So do they have the drive, the commitment? Are they the best people to solve this problem? And then I always go back to what is the problem you're solving. So for example, over the last few years, I've seen a lot of blockchain company trying to pitch me, and it's probably a great technology, but every time I went back to, is this a big problem, and is blockchain going to be the solution that brings a 10 times better solution to the problem? And oftentimes the answer is no. So these are a few of the things that I'm looking at when I decide what to invest.
So look at the people and solve a problem and try to avoid Me Too-ism.
Yeah, and solve it in a different way than it's been solved before.
Well, Renaud, thank you very much, et merci aussi pour parler français en avance. It's very difficult for me not speaking Spanish, but it's so enjoyable to spend time with you. Ladies and gentlemen, Renaud Visage.
Thank you. Thank you.